Yanis Varoufakis, Greek, gamma iota nu eta beta alpha rho omicron upsilon phi kappa eta, pronounced Is Varoufakis, born March 24, 1961, is a Greek-Australian economist. He is the former finance minister of Greece. In the January 2015 general election, he was elected to the Greek parliament representing Syriza and took office in the new government of Alexis Tsipras 2 days later, on January 27, 2015. He resigned from the Ministry of Finance on July 6, 2015. Varoufakis is a participant in the current debates on the global and European crisis, the author of the Global Minotaur and several academic texts on economics and game theory, professor of economic theory at the University of Athens and a private consultant for Valve Corporation. He describes himself as a libertarian Marxist. In truth, Karl Marx was responsible for framing my perspective of the world we live in, from my childhood to this day. It is not something that I volunteer to talk about in polite society much these days because the very mention of the M-word switches audiences off. Varoufakis was born in Palaio, to an affluent and politically interested family. His father Georgios Varoufakis had fought on the communist side in the Greek Civil War and spent years imprisoned on the island of Makron Isos and in exile. He however eventually turned from United Democratic Left, EDA, to the socialist PASOK, and became chairman of Halevouargiki, Greece's biggest steel producer. Varoufakis's mother abandoned her conservative background and engaged with the PASOK-aligned Women's Union of Greece promoting gender equality. Varoufakis says he set up one of PASOK's first youth wings. He also became active in support of the Troops Out movement, which campaigns for a British withdrawal from Northern Ireland. He says, Ireland was very close to our hearts, as he was growing up, with his family singing Irish rebel songs and following the conflict in Northern Ireland. He says he and those he grew up with considered Belfast their second home. Attending the private Moretus school, Varoufakis early decided to spell his first name with one N, rather than the standard two, for aesthetic reasons. When his teacher gave him a low mark for that, he became angry and has continued spelling his first name with one N ever since. Education. In 1978, Varoufakis enrolled at the University of Essex. He chose to study economics believing it was the lingua franca of political discourse, despite initial interest in physics. However, during his time at University of Essex, Varoufakis felt that economics was only interested in assembling simplistic mathematical models and that the mathematics used were of low competency, consequently believing that the economic thinking derived from it was equally atrocious. In 1982, Varoufakis decided to pursue a MSc in mathematical statistics at the University of Birmingham and a PhD in economics, Essex. Varoufakis was inspired to study economics after he met Andreas Papandreou, an academic economist who founded PASOK and became Greece's first socialist prime minister. After training in mathematics and statistics, he received his PhD in economics in 1987 at the University of Essex. University of Essex and University of East Anglia. Before that he had already begun teaching economics and econometrics at the University of Essex and the University of East Anglia. In 1988, he spent a year as a fellow at the University of Cambridge. University of Sydney. From 1989 until 2000 he taught as senior lecturer in economics at the Department of Economics of the University of Sydney. University of Athens. In 2000, he accepted the offer of Yanis Varoufakis to become professor of economic theory at the University of Athens. In 2002, Varoufakis established the University of Athens doctoral program in economics, UAdFalekan, which he directed until 2008. Valve Corporation. In October 2011, after receiving an email from Gabe Newell, CEO of Valve Software, Varoufakis visited Valve's headquarters in Seattle. Valve had issues in scaling up their virtual economies and as they linked multiple economies together and requested for Varoufakis for consultation. Beginning in March 2012, Varoufakis became economist in residence at Valve Corporation. He researched the virtual economy on the Steam digital delivery platform, specifically looking at exchange rates and trade deficits. In June 2012, he began a blog about his research at Valve. In February 2013, his function at Valve was to work on a game for predicting trends in gaming. University of Texas, Austin. From January 2013 he taught at the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. In 2013, he was appointed the Athens desk editor of the online magazine WDW Review, in which he contributed until January 2015. The IUC of Turin, Italy. On January 22, 2015, the International University College of Turin awarded to Varoufakis an honorary professorship in comparative law, economics and finance for his extraordinary theoretical contribution to the understanding of the global economic crisis. Political career. Advisor to the Papandreou government. From January 2004 to December 2006, Varoufakis served as economic advisor to George Papandreou, of whose government he was to become an ardent critic a few years later. Greek finance minister. On January 25, 2015, Varoufakis was appointed finance minister by Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras after the election victory of Syriza in the January 2015 parliamentary election. The party promised a reduction and restructuring of Greece's debt and the abolition of austerity measures. Varoufakis sits with Syriza legislators in parliament but is not a party member. The Adam Smith Institute, one of the leading free market think tanks of the United Kingdom, has enthusiastically supported Varoufakis's debt swap plan and has asked British Chancellor of the Exchequer George Osborne to support it. Varoufakis has proposed debt swap measures, including bonds pegged to economic growth, which would replace the existing bonds of the European bailout program. Bloomberg said that Varoufakis was a brilliant economist, but he had difficult interactions with other politicians and the media. Galbraith, referring to Varoufakis's expertise in game theory, has said that he knows as much about this subject as anyone on the planet, and that he will be thinking more than a few steps ahead in any interactions with the Troika. In February 2015, the government needed to negotiate an extension on its loans with the Troika. Eurozone officials warned Varoufakis that talking to journalists of bankruptcy could lead to capital flight. On February 20, a 4-month extension on the loans was agreed. In March 2015, the Wall Street Journal pointed to several tensions between Greece and the other Eurozone countries, saying that some countries feel they have taken the tough medicine and the €195 billion owed is not insignificant. Further, they stated other governments have philosophical differences with Varoufakis and his Anglosphere and Keynesian leanings. Peter Ludlow said Varoufakis and his colleagues turned instinctively to the UK and the US even before they called on the European left. On March 20, 2015, Varoufakis wrote that he felt that the Greek state has not been able to service its debts since 2010. Furthermore, taking the bailout loan in that year was a mistake, as it transferred private bank losses to the Greek taxpayer. Also, he wrote that the latest agreement was an excellent opportunity to move forward. In a discussion with Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz on invitation of U.S. economic think tank Institute for New Economic Thinking, Varoufakis stated on April 9, 2015 that the Greek state does not have the capacity to develop public assets. Therefore, he announced that his government was restarting the privatization process. However, unlike the former governments, they would insist on establishing public-private partnerships with the state retaining a minority stake to generate state revenues. They would also require a minimum investment on behalf of the bidder, and decent working conditions for the workers. Varoufakis also said that although the government needed to avoid a primary budget deficit, the bailout program's target of a surplus of 4.5% of GDP was too high. Varoufakis resigned as finance minister on July 6, 2015, the day following the no vote in the bailout referendum, reporting that other European participants had expressed a wish for his absence in negotiations. Works. Varoufakis is the author of several books on game theory, is also a recognized speaker and often appears as analyst for national news media. A modest proposal. In November 2010, he and Stuart Holland, a former British Labour Party MP and economics professor at the University of Coimbra, Portugal, published a modest proposal, a set of economic policies aimed at overcoming the euro crisis. In 2013, version 4.0 of a modest proposal appeared with the American economist James K. Galbraith as a third CO author. This version was published in late 2013 in French with a supporting foreword by Michel Rocard, former Prime Minister of France. Since September 2011, Truman Factor features select articles by Varoufakis in English and in Spanish. Varoufakis compares the role of the U.S. economy since the 1970s in relation to the rest of the world with the Minotaur. Both Holland and Galbraith praised Varoufakis as an economist. In 2005 and 2006, Varoufakis traveled extensively with his partner, artist Yanis Varoufakis, along 7 dividing lines around the world, in Palestine, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Kosovo, Belfast, Cyprus, Kashmir, and the US-Mexico border. Varoufakis produced the installation cut, 7 dividing lines, while Varoufakis wrote texts that then became a political economic account of these divisions, entitled The Globalizing Wall. In 2010 Varoufakis and Varoufakis founded the project Vital Space. Work in progress. A book called And the Weak Suffer What They Must, Europe's Crisis and America's Economic Future is to be released in 2016. He is working on a book with the working title Reverse Alchemy, Europe on the Road to Disintegration. Personal life. Varoufakis' second wife is installation artist Yanis Varoufakis. He has a daughter in Sydney from his first marriage to academic Marguerite Poulos.